talk about a bunch of different psychological aspects of sports and sports performance. We're going to include some sleep, and we're just going to have a nice little conversation here. We've got Dr. Jim Taylor, Dr. Brendan Duffy. Is it doctor?
No,
Yes.
I'm a sleep technologist and a certified sleep educator.
All right. Dr. Lenny Wade, correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Jesse Mitchell? Michael?
Dr. Jesse Michelle, yep.
Michelle.
Just
So we have
off the tongue.
It rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? See, it wasn't Ewell this time. It was me. There you go.
Normally, guys, I'm the one that butchers names, but I'll let him have a few every now and again.
So for those, our listeners, I should say, let's run down through. Jesse, you can start us off. Just give us like a little 10-second blurb about you.
10-second blurb. Background in sport and performance psychology. Have worked with elite performers, elite high operations soldiers, and in business and industry. Currently part of the performance psychology program at Deloitte. I have been the mental skills coordinator for the Houston Astros for a few years and worked with the U.S. Army contractors doing resilience and performance training. That is my 10-second spiel. Great to be here.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. PhD in psychology, a long career in sport and performance psychology, work in sports, business with a lot of surgeons, performing artists. Performance is performance. I also have a sort of multiple elite athletic background that may or may not come out, but I work with a lot of high level performers, as well as written a bunch of books and speak around the world, etc.
Lenny?
My PhD's in industrial organizational psychology. I have a background as a professional track and field athlete, competed in the Olympic Games in 2016, and then after my professional athletics career was over, transitioned into working in the sport and performance psychology realm. Currently work with Houston Dash women's soccer team. I work with USA track and field athletes and some international track and field athletes, and also do some work with special warfare operators and teach some graduate school classes as well.
Excellent. And Brendan?
My full-time job, I'm director of 5 sleep centers. I've been a sleep technologist for 25 years, run a lot of clinical studies on adults and children, written a lot about sleep as it pertains to sports performance recovery, worked with a couple of teams on schedules and education for their athletes.
Excellent. So that's our panel. You will take it away with your first question.
Well, here's my first thought. I mean, we have an eclectic group of professionals here with us today. So, Dr. Taylor, let's talk a little bit about approach. You seem to. We were talking a little bit for the audience. We were talking a little bit in the green room before we came on, and we started to get into that. So let's continue to go ahead and carry us through that, your approach to dealing with your group of athletes.
Sure. Well, I take 2 approaches in my work. One path is sort of traditional, what's called mental training. And I talk about having to strengthen mental muscles. So I use the metaphor of mental muscles instead of mental skills. And that these mental muscles, just like physical muscles, can be weak, they can be strong, or they can be injured. And some of the mental muscles I deal with are motivation, confidence, intensity, focus, and emotions. Another part of mental training is I help athletes and other performers develop what I call a mental toolkit. So they're going to get a lot of metaphorical flat tires in their careers and their lives. And if we use the metaphor of flat tires, you can fix the flat tire if you have a jack, a spare, and a tire iron. But if you don't have those tools, if you don't know how to use them, you're stuck on the side of the road. Same thing with loss of confidence, anxiety, difficulty focusing, unhealthy emotions. If they don't have tools in their toolkit to deal with those areas, they're going to struggle. So that's the traditional mental training side. I also go deep. And what I talk about is helping athletes develop healthy attitudes and removing what I call mental obstacles. So I find so often that athletes can, even at the highest level, can be darn solid mentally in terms of their training and their competitive efforts. But if they go into a competition with the wrong attitudes, they're almost done before they've even started. So some of the attitudes that I see are really problematic are overinvestment, perfectionism, fear of failure, which is epidemic in our culture.
Yeah.
Expectations and pressure.
Okay, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so basically, I go back and forth between a very practical approach, giving athletes things they can do, because athletes are doers. They want stuff to do, like mental imagery, self-talk, breathing, routines. But I also go to the deep stuff and help basically get the crap out of, pardon my language, get the crap out of their minds that interferes with them being able to perform at the highest level. Because to perform at the very highest level, and Lenny obviously knows this firsthand, being an Olympian, is that you have to be free. You have to be free of all the stuff, the worry, the doubt, the fear that can hold you back.
So, those are some great points. We understand that, athletes come in all kind of bunches, and the athletes you deal with, how do they, I'm going to let you answer this one, but I'm going to quickly take it to Dr. Michelle. And how do they respond to it? How do you get, that give and take going to where, sometimes an athlete is, it just, I've done it this way and been successful my whole life. I don't want to change.
Right. Well, most athletes come to me because they feel stuck. They're trying to get somewhere and they can't seem to get there. So they're generally pretty darn motivated when they come to me. And I've been very fortunate that I seem to attract some unbelievable athletes to work with, whether they're 11-year-olds or 32-year-old professional athletes, where they're highly motivated, they're intelligent, they're introspective. They see that they're stuck and they're frustrated and they want help. So for the most part, I would say, 98% of the clients that I've had over the years, they're ready to do the work and they're ready to dig in and figure things out.
Okay. Dr. Michelle, your perspective? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Clearly, because without the ability to look inside and explore your thoughts, your emotions, and your unconscious. So much of what holds athletes back in my work is unconscious forces, unconscious drives. And so I help and that's a really difficult thing because it's by definition unknowable. And so a lot of my work is educating athletes about what is holding them back, what possible attitudes and obstacles are holding them back, and then bringing them to consciousness. Because once those unconscious forces are conscious, then they can do something about it. And it makes it more manageable, more controllable, and they can do steps to free themselves of those forces.
So we're going to go.
And I wasn't sure if you're still talking to me, but quickly, ultimately they have to want it. They have to be open to it. And if they're not, then they're going to be stuck for a long time until they finally hit a point where it's like, I really need to do this. And that applies not only mentally, but certainly in terms of conditioning, in terms of technique and tactics and so on. Go ahead, you guys.
Dr. Michelle, your perspective?
Quick. Yeah, love what Jim's been saying. And I mean, I'll go one step further. I find it comical, even the idea that athletes might not be interested in the psychology of performance. I think anyone who has put on a set of skis or, put on a tracksuit or held a golf club or held a tennis racket understands that there's more than just the physical and the technical aspect of performing. Shoot, you don't even have to be an athlete. Go be a cook in a line. Go be a firefighter. We're all humans. We're all performers. So to suggest that, the athlete isn't interested, I think is the first misconception. I think for the psychology experts, so to speak, on the panel, I don't know about you all, but I love that. Like if an athlete walks into the room and sort of gives me the cold shoulder or the middle finger, to me, that's a challenge. That there's a gap there, right? They're either not comfortable, to Jim's point, themselves looking in the mirror yet, and I have to figure out why, what's getting in the way, whether it's something subconscious, whether it's something very conscious, or maybe they've had a bad experience, right, with somebody in my space. Or, there could be many different reasons why somebody might not be ready. And I think somebody talked about readiness to change. That's sort of a core, psychological theory. Like we're all humans. We're all trying to change. hopefully trying to get better. Part of our job is to understand what are the challenges, what are the obstacles getting in the way. It might be individual, it might be systemic, it might be cultural, it might be environmental. So it's not as easy as, man, they don't want to do it, right? Anyone who's investing that much time and energy and effort in getting better wants to find every nook and cranny and uncover, everything under the sun they can to get better, which is why you brought the sleep expert on as well, right? For recovery and rejuvenation. Elite athletes and performers understand that all this stuff matters. So for us, it's about asking the right questions, observing intentionally, and helping them bridge the gap to where they are to where they want to go.
And I think, when I look back and I try to put everything into simple terms, is you're identifying the void and then proceeding to fill it with wherever you need to, so to speak.
I hate to say that was lost, but that was just lost.
Oh, that's too
bad.
bad.
Well,
the whole thing.
I'm not going to recreate that exact response, but we can go in a different direction.
Everything that Jesse said is gone.
Yeah, it was
okay.
It was recording on this side.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's still recorded. But the database error for me kicked me out 3 times.
Gotcha. Are you good now?
I don't have a backup, so hopefully it's in the cloud.
Okay. Well, that's why we have a production crew. All right, Jesse, keep on rolling. We'll get enough content as we continue to talk.
Yeah, Chris, don't need my content. I'm happy to turn it back over to you or Lenny or Brendan if y'all have anything to add to that. I would love to hear it.
We're waiting on Dr. Waite.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where to take off. Those were both some really great insights. I'm thinking a little bit more about some of where I can kind of add or just kind of touch on a little bit of my approach. I think a lot of my approach probably comes from some of my experiences as an athlete and really, really digging into some of the emotional demands that are placed on our athletes and how a lot of those emotional demands are often really overlooked. And I even think about just how those emotional demands of athletes have just continued to increase over the last decade since I've retired. Just kind of our expectation for them to be happy-faced front people, promoting goods, post-event interviews, constantly accessible to others, and how they manage their personality as a professional athlete alongside their performance as a professional athlete. And sometimes those two things can work well together, and sometimes they require completely different skill sets. And a lot of that also depends on the psychological functioning of that individual. So I really focus on trying to understand the unique traits that are driving that person to perform well, and then how we can help them both perform well physically and then also manage all of the external things that are related to being a professional athlete today.
And one of those external things I think is becoming very aware, especially in recent years, to sports psychologists and others on the physical side of the realm like me, is sleep and how important is rest. And so we're gonna bring in Brendan to talk about that. And when we talk about approach, you've heard Dr. Taylor, Dr. Michelle, Dr. Waite talk about their approaches to things. So give me
why can't a professional get
when they're approaching something and then all of a sudden they're I don't want to say stuck because they're professionals. They're not stuck. They're all the way down to what could it be?
Well, I think for sleep, when you start to speak about sleep, one of the things that we could do is right off the bat, I'd like to see the teams they do have validated athletic sleep questionnaires right now. And I think that affords an opportunity because usually any mental or emotional disorder has a sleep component to it. So by bringing these athletic sleep questionnaires to each team and doing it every time, it may open the door for these athletes to start unraveling what else is going on that's impacting their sleep. Because
so, Brendan, how do you get
more? They're going to sleep less.
Valid, reliable, accurately answered,
whatever fears,
honest
whatever performance, whatever depressions, you can open at least that door a little bit. And then those sleep people can maybe refer them further when they start to see what might be causing their sleep angst.
He didn't hear.
Hello?
Honest.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Brendan, did you hear Chris's
Yes,
question?
I did. I answered. I didn't know if you heard.
I don't think you answered their most recent one.
I'm sorry.
No, he said, how did you get accurate answers on your questionnaires and accurate, valid?
Because the questions
honest.
they ask are across the board. You want to know if there's sleep disorders going on. They ask about chronobiology. They ask different things on these questionnaires. Came from University of Calgary, Dr. Charles Samuels and Dr. Amy Bender. So that's a validated questionnaire. Goes into different gamuts, and it kind of explores different things that are going on with the person's sleep. There is another questionnaire that goes over behaviors, because you want to find out how they're spending their time and what their routines are for sleep. And you're trying to comb out, is this a physical, is this a performance issue or an anxiety issue rather, or is it some kind of physical thing that's going on with the athlete? But to hear the messages that the mental coaches are telling them, it behooves us to make sure that they're getting a good night's sleep and that they're ready to perform and ready to listen to all the good information that they're going to get when they're working one-on-one with their coaches or with their mental counselors. Hello?
So it's probably not going to be a question of how many hours that you slept last night.
That's going to be
correct?
part of it. They'll go over that. They'll ask them how alert they feel, if they're using any kind of sleep medications, different things. Anything I mentioned today is things that are obvious, because I want to say off the bat it's not HIPAA, but I want to give an example. Like Michael Phelps, we all know that he's had his issues with depression and things that are going on. And there was one point in his career where he said he was lucky there was only one Ambien left in the bottle, because had there been more, he would have taken it. So definitely, here's an example where somebody that we think is on top of the world is going through a lot of things that maybe somebody talking about his sleep, and why is he using this Ambien? What's going on? Maybe they combed that part out. They could have sent them to somebody else to work out some of the other situations that are going on. So sleep issues can be a window to some of the anxiety and the fears that performance issues that some of these athletes are facing.
So Dr. Waite, going backwards, then I'll go Dr. Waite, Dr. Michelle, Dr. Taylor. How do you see sleep and or consultations working together to kind of to help the athlete through difficult situations? I think of one part of consultation, which is planning, that no one ever thinks of as part of the psychological or the mental routine, but planning is pretty critical.
Planning in terms of consultations, in terms of sleep?
Just overall, just whatever you're talking about, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, sleep is always a topic that comes up, just in terms of it's a fundamental aspect of being a good performer. And I think it also is one of the things that suffers the most when you are under extreme stress. And typically when people are trying to perform their best at something, they're also experiencing that extreme stress. And so kind of talking about how they are protecting their sleep, what are their attitudes towards sleep? Is sleep a gap that they can close in their when they kind of view themselves being at their best performer? Is there an element of needing to get more sleep? And so it's always something that is central